Hello, Josh here from Sprint Depth. In this video, I'm going to go through the three layers every good brand needs to last. So most people will either do one of them or two of them or none of them, and few get all three right. And when you get all three right, you have a long-lasting brand with a strategic foundation that stands out, is memorable, sticky, distinct, as well as it can actually be operational and used by creative teams. So those are the three layers, and I'm going to get through the end. The third one at the end is the one most people forget, but let me just go straight into it. So the first one is strategy. Now this one's pretty simple. We can't really do anything without a strategy. So a strategy broken down is basically just a way of deciding to do something, right? So a strategy could be as simple as, should we go for red or blue? That's the absolute simplest way. Or a strategy could be entirely of how we want to reposition our business. Maybe we want to pivot to go more upmarket, or pivot because this one of our main products is sort of taking over and that's becoming our signature product. So we want to pivot to become more of for example, a customer success platform as opposed to an all-in-one platform. So that's an example of a strategy. And if we just break down that a little bit more, there's loads of different small little strategies we can take throughout a rebrand process, or even continue long-lasting brand building. So for me, strategy breaks down into anything verbal. Just to give you context, the other ones will be more visual. So this one is more about the verbal strategy. I know the word story is different to strategy, but just for this first layer, everything that falls down into verbal could be your messaging, you're targeting the story. So what is the story we're telling? We don't want to just talk in feature land, feature world. We want to actually have that sort of chunked up, creative vision idea of a story that we're talking to, that people buy into. So the age-old classic of that is, if you look at Liquid Death, for example, their strategy was they're not feature talk would have been buy our water, it's 100% still purified water, but that's just feature, and loads of other companies sell the same thing. Whereas their tagline is murder your thirst, right? So if we apply that to SaaS world, tech software companies, you might sell agentic AI workflows for legal, government, tech that gives you strategic insights and turnkey reasoning for your development teams, whatever. That's the perfect word. I'm making this up, but that's not sticky. And ultimately, people don't want to buy that, and they don't want to join that tribe. It's not really an inspirational rally cry. Whereas if we had to take the same metaphor of murder your thirst, and for this made-up SaaS company I just made up, we can say death to the old way of tech, or death to the old model, or something like that. Is just a bit more inspiring. And then we can basically turn that into a whole story where we say, free the new movement, or I'm just making this stuff up. And that's a bit more inspirational, vision focused. It's got a strategic foundation. So this falls into that workshop period of how we run our sprints. Is we're trying to basically, and we've also got a resource of like 64 brutal questions where we're basically trying to constantly peel the layers back of that surface level stuff. We want to understand what makes you different. Who are your Dream 100 super fans? Why do they like you? What does your product do that your competitors don't do? And where does that overlap happen? So what your customers love about you, what you do that no one else can do, what your product does that's really great, where you want to go as a company. These are some interesting questions. These are just surface level, or like just your average questions, but these other smaller questions that we can constantly ask, just to sort of find out what as a brand actually makes you different. So that bleeds into the story. Positioning and visioning. Vision could be, what do we want the brand to achieve? Like I said, sometimes we do rebrand so that we can basically execute on a business decision. So it's not always, it looks pretty. It's like, how do we want to position the market? Like I said previously, like, what is the product we're selling to who? What do we want to be known for? In what section? Do we want to own a new category, create a new category? What will that category be? Positioning could be anything from a small, if we're basically mid-sprint and we share multiple directions, it could be as small as this identity route, this identity system versus this identity system. They have slight different look and feel. So this one would be positioning maybe more like mass market, it's a little bit more fun and playful, whereas another identity could be very upmarket, very premium. We want to be very grown up, buttoned up. So that's a small example of different ways of positioning. And then the last one is also overarching principle. So that bleeds into how we basically inform the creative. So any person in the brand industry will tell you can't just go straight away and start building creative. Like, we need a target to aim at, we need a goalpost to hit. So that is the overarching principle, where we're trying to tell, the visual needs to tell that story. So if the example, this made up brand is, we're selling, so if this made up brand, for example, we're selling clarity and reasoning and logic and decisions, I'm kind of going with this analogy, then the overarching principle would obviously sort of workshop that and come up with an inspirational story to that. But that needs to then, when you look and we build the creative and identity, it needs to tell that story. If the idea is, for example, different example, a brand is full stack creative, right? Or full stack solutions. Now, all the creative should somewhat tell an idea of a full stack, like the motion principle. And now we're sort of going to the second layer, but there needs to be a strategic brief, almost a word. So is it a principle, like if it's full stack, then our creative needs to kind of look like a stack. It needs to either, there's so many different ways we can interpret the word stack, but it at least needs to bridge that gap of the verbal storytelling, written down stuff, into what you actually see visually. So that's everything that I group into the strategy bucket. Like I said, it's not only strategy, it's more the verbal, it's more the story. It can even be copywriting, it can even be messaging, tone of voice. That stuff for me is the first layer, strategy. Okay, so the next layer is identity. Now, identity I could even say a visual identity, for example. I understand it's one word can be quite vague, but for me, visual identity particularly is, how does the brand look, right? So if you just think simple words, just visually, we're thinking of the sort of generic line items in a brand guidelines will be your logo, your color, your typography, your graphic system, your icons, your photography, your art direction, small icons, high fidelity icons, little patterns, illustrations, anything that you sort of goes down in that like old school traditional brand, right? And now the beauty of the identity is, like, a well executed identity firstly hits the brief on the strategy, so it's telling that story. It's basically singing off the same hymn sheet as the strategy, where it's mirroring all of those different words and the feelings. And then secondly, it needs to actually, or maybe three things. Secondly, it needs to feel like it needs to be appropriate. It needs to be sort of look and feel like the right, if you think of sector aesthetics, like if we are selling a software tool and we maybe go to like a dev tool, we go super hackathon, like pixels and really hardcore dev tool, but the company, like I said, their strategy, they want to reposition and go upmarket, and they want to sort of be a bit more clean and sleek, for example. That's just a made up example, but then it doesn't look and feel the way it should. So, or if we're rebranding a burger brand, we work with tech companies, but for example, a burger brand, and now we come up with this identity. Sure, it could hit the strategic level of, if we're using the example of stack, sure, it can tell the wording stack, but does it look like a burger brand? Does it look and feel like a software company? Does it look and feel and align with the vision of the company? And then the third thing of the identity and the visual stuff is just well executed, creative, good old fashioned graphic design, where it needs to tick all those boxes of the principles of what good visual creative stuff looks like. Sure, you can split that into art direction and taste, which I think takes more experience to have that fine taste. But if you go even simpler, just needs to be good design, needs to be polished, needs to be can't have any errors, things need to be aligned. It needs to be well executed, where it looks polished and premium and high quality design. And then the third part, or maybe I'm going to the fourth part now, is the hardest part, is that it needs to be distinct. And this, I think, is the biggest thing, if you remember from this identity, is it needs to be distinct. Half the reason, or all the reason of branding is that you can differentiate and be known as you stay in your own lane, you have your own story, your own look. So this creative needs to be distinct. We can't use the same colors as another brand. We can't just copy the same icons. We need to, at every single moment, the logo, the color, the type, it needs to be just completely something new, like not different but brand new. The more brave we are, the more further we push away from anything else, we know it's scary because we're going into this unknown place. But that's when you know you're onto something good, and that's when you know you're coming up with a brand new brand. And what I mean by brand new brand is not your brand new. I mean a brand new look and feel. There's something that's completely ownable. Like it's not, oh, it looks a bit like this company, it looks a bit like this brand. We want something fresh that is an uncharted territory, which is tough. Like I mentioned, all those things to get all four of those things to overlap. So from an identity, that's what we're looking for. And now I'm going to go into the last step, but most people would often get these two first steps are not easy, but they're sort of the more common steps, which you can imagine. Maybe some of the stuff I mentioned you haven't heard anything new yet, and especially because it's just been written out stuff. You haven't actually seen this in action. But the third step is systems, right? So sure, if we basically go down the list and we've got strategy in place, we've got a good, distinct identity that looks good, it's something brand new. Sure, we can hand it over to the client team, but they need to be able to use this stuff. A brand is used, multiple brand building, constant act of branding it needs to be done over and over and over and over and over. And when we get to that Series A level, there's different channels that the brands need to show up. So it needs to be webinar covers, social, day-to-day social, performance stuff like social ads, LinkedIn ads, your website, obviously, like events, like maybe print stuff. All of these things, the brand needs to always look and feel like the exact same thing. It needs to have the same identity, telling the same story. So to explain more about the systems, we need to hand over well-built sound toolkit, like a different part of kits that the creative team can use, whether you're a Figma expert or whether you're a non-technical exec that needs to quickly make a slide deck, right, for a keynote. We need to be able to give you assets where it's simple drag and drop, plug and play. We can't have the whole brand hinging on one really cool illustration that meets the criteria of the previous two layers, but after that it's unscalable, right? We want to be able to scale a piece of creative that has the same system and story across small scale, big scale. If we wanted to look playful, corporate, if we wanted to be print, small, if it needs to serve different functions, we need to have that overarching principle and an interesting, it needs to be built in a way that we can toggle it and play with it and constantly play. Like we need to be able to give the team exciting materials to work with. It can't get tired after 2 weeks, right? So if we hand them over, here are your colors, here's your one illustration, and use this pattern over this image. They'll do that for like a week, and then they've run out of ideas, and the brand's got tired, and then they're going to end up doing the exact same thing. They're going to get bored of that. They're going to try something brand new that's completely off-piste. They're going to start putting brand new assets out, and then it's going to look completely different, and it's going to be without strategic direction, and then the brand starts to unravel, right? So this is the sort of, I don't want to say messy, but this is the part that you don't really see that goes behind the scenes when we hand over a full Figma project, is that we hand over the Figma library where it's got all the saved color variables, we've got all the components, we've got toggleable components that are then used in other components, so everything can be changed with the variables in Figma, but it's all linked to the master components. Tooling, so obviously this is the future of branding, is we're handing over fully interactive web apps, or basically web tools where you can, with a few clicks on the panel, toggle and create different creative, right? But it's all coming from the same idea. For example, if it's a little square, if the story's stacking and it's this bitmap idea, like when we need icons where we've got 4 little squares, if we want a pattern, it's got that same square, but now it's been generated in an interesting way that's done the same way as all the other different applications. So this is one way, and with the recent Figma updates, you can actually get these custom tools. We actually handed them over natively in Figma, which is really exciting. So you're literally in Figma, you've got all your variables, you've got your grid styles, you've got your text styles, you've got your own custom tool in Figma that with a couple of clicks, like I said, whether you're the founder coming in to quickly make a keynote or investor deck, you just do a couple of clicks, drag it over, you've got your text style, we've give you best practices so that you can understand, like basically take that as a starting point and then just change that how you want. So this is often the part where we hand, or not we, but we see other people hand over a brand. Looks great, a couple of weeks, their creative team takes it internally for a couple of weeks, months, and now it's up to them. We leave, we're not an ongoing partner, and that's basically that's where the proof of the pudding is if their team can actually use it. Like when their designer needs to make a website or a new section on the website or a event poster, do they have the strategy, the story? Is the team bought into the story? 2, is the identity look good at all times? And 3, do they have is it actually operational? So this is what we mean when we say turnkey operating system, is that we basically hand over this operating system and it's a 1-click, 2-click, and your brand is at all points, all touch points, high quality on brand. And this is how we help our Series A, sometimes Series B clients keep up with the demands of the Series A growth, is that they've got so many channels, but without a turnkey operating system, it's just, we got that one freelancer in who gave us that one illustration, but now he's gone or she's gone, so now what? And then brand becomes the bottleneck where you can't meet the demands of the growth because you basically don't have the toolkit, or your toolkit's outdated, and everyone's like, we've seen that same ... that same pixel effect or that same illustration over and over, and like I said, you start creating new stuff and then it goes completely off brand. So I'll quickly show you through some of our toolkits and libraries and turnkey operating system now. So here's just a quick overview of just one of the projects I found that we last handled. I'm not going to go over all of our projects. I think this one will suffice, and I don't want to keep this too long because it's a mega project. But if you look at the brand guidelines, these aren't just your dead or PDF pages. Everything here is built from the Figma library, right? So like I mentioned, we've got that strategic foundation in the verbal section here, but what is really exciting, just a quickly summary of this brand, is they do social media platform for video and photo for social teams, but the whole idea was, and the strategy was, we want to supercharge the creative workflows, right? So we built them. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we could have just handed them one of these supercharged creative workflows. They would have drag and dropped it, and then eventually they would have got stuck. But the way we basically operationalize that with our turnkey creative is, apart from explaining how to use it, when to use it, how not to use it, all of these things, everything has represents a story. But the exciting part is, if I get there now, we basically had them a full library of these supercharged workflows, right? So yeah, just to give you more context, that's enough of how I explained. That was the idea, supercharged creative workflow. But to scale that and operationalize that, we needed to build a full library of different workflows. So these are already pre-made that they can drag and drop. And if you look at it, these are just about 50 out of infinite different ways they can do it. So if we go to the actual component library that we hand over, is a fully operational. This is what we mean when I say operational, is everything here is live and it can be toggled, right? So we built the base components for the different, how the base, we basically disassemble the workflows into these master shapes or ramps, and then we assemble those, and each of those are then filled with different types of creativity. So if I take one of these, let's just take this full one and just play with it here, you've got your workflow here, and then inside you've got these masks. So like I said, you've got three different things brought together, and then in each one we can toggle this. So this can become motion, this can become so I just got a new one, but each one of these you can toggle not only the actual ramp size as well as the fill. So this could be a motion. I'm not going to get into detail of the strategy behind the story in each one, but this could be Maybe we want that to be smaller, thinner. Maybe we want the fill of this, the gradient, to be a different one. So this could be gold and orange, or maybe that one. And then this fill can be basically a collab or a audio. And this is how you can basically toggle, infinitely create new ones. So then, like I said, if you want to create a new one, if we're making a deck right now, I'm literally going to freestyle this, and we're going to say investor deck 2026, right? I've got my type styles. I think it should be saved here. Slate H1. Okay, make this even bigger. Now, if I'm like a founder and I don't know any design skills, I can basically drag this in. I can choose the color, whatever I want to be, like dark. Okay, I can make this whatever color I want. I can then scale this up, drag and drop, plug and play, and I'm ready to go. I've built a perfectly on-brand, high-quality design asset in seconds. So then if I want this color to change, I can change the color here to maybe this. I want this yellow to be orange, or this to be purple. I want this to be, I'm really just freestyling this, and this to be maroon or purple. You can see how we can just do that instantly. Here, if we want this to be the base layer to change to make, but this will take a bit longer to fully build it from scratch, but maybe we want this to go like this, this to go like this, and there we've just built another one. I'll have to just quickly align that, and then maybe we change the color of that one to orange, and there I've just built another one instantly, and then maybe we convert that, and then we've already got like 2 pieces of design material in about a couple of seconds, and it's always on brand. So what else we got here that just demonstrates a library? We've got all the text styles, effect styles, color styles, gradients, grids, components, everything locked in. The imagery is all basically components, so you can toggle between those. Here's an example of how we systematize it, is that you've got endless different ways. So it's not just a one hit design and then the brand's done. It's an infinite living and breathing monster where you've got all these different parts, and the team gets excited because they can constantly try a bit of this. They can add a bit of these sparks, speed sparks. They can add the cursor. They can add a gradient. There's a new gradient. They can change the texture. If in 6 months they can add a new texture, there's just infinite ways that they can continuously test and improve and develop the brand, right? So that's just an example. Here's again how we can scale that identity. So it's by no means going to get tired ever. If you want to check this project, feel free to go look on our website, sprintdep.com/slate. But that's everything from me today. Feel free to, let me just get this page up. But that's everything from me. Like I said, if you want to learn more about us, go look at sprintdep.com, our website. If you want to check out those 64 questions to help you with any strategy, I'll put that in the link somewhere. But until then, have a good one. Happy designing, happy brand building, and see you on the next one. Cheers.